You're listening to the Emissary Authors Podcast, where we help faith-driven founders and entrepreneurs tell the stories that matter. This episode was made possible in part by the Emissary Author Workshops and our title of the week, The Hope of War, from Emissary author Larry Cripps. Go to publishwithemissary.com/workshops and thehopeofwar.com for more details. And it's the Emissary Authors Podcast, once again, where we help faith-driven founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs tell the stories that matter. My name is Paul Edwards, and I'm glad to be back on another episode with my partner in crime and my co-host, Jason Todd. Jason, great to have you with us. How are you?
Always a pleasure. Look forward to this podcast as well with our author, Larry Cripps. As we're recording this, we've got a cool event that's coming up as part of his book launch. It's also a fundraiser. Getting a lot of success off of that. And I was excited to play a part in this book because, you know, he has such a compelling story over so many years.
Yep.
And like many of our authors, needed to encapsulate that into a book so that it lives on after the fact. So I'm excited to bring Larry onto the show. Larry, welcome to the Emissary Authors Podcast.
Well, good afternoon. It's good to be here.
Great to have you back. Great to have you on the show, my friend, and so proud of you and everything that you've worked through to get to this point. We're recording at the time we're recording this. This is 2 weeks from your official launch fundraiser event there in Nashville. And I just realized Memorial Day weekend will hit even before that. So, you know, we're down to 10 days here before your book is live and away it goes, and we'll see where it takes you. But great to have you with us, and eager to dig in on to let our audience hear the background of how this came to be. And so that's where I want to start. And just to say, you know, you reached this point in your life, you've got all this experience and all these stories to relate. Why this book and why now? Let's start there.
Well, I'd always talk about writing a book, but it's easier said than done. And several years ago, I'd been teaching a class at our local church for about 5 or 6 years. And I felt like I was preaching to the choir. And with everything that's going on in the world, I just felt like I needed to re-engage people that didn't always hear the gospel, And my wife, Charlene, convinced me that I had a lot of experience, and it would be foolish to take what I had learned, the lessons I had learned from all that experience, to the grave that I need to share with my children, first and foremost, and our grandchildren, but that there was an audience out there, audience of, young people, veterans and their families, people who know veterans, and try to get their heads around, why their, situations that they face is so unique, and why it's important that we increase public awareness of some of the challenges that they face. And that's what we're doing. This book is one way to do that. I thought about this 5 years ago when I was praying about this, and I about how to engage to get back out into the to the flow of things and to engage people, and it impressed me to write a book. And I said, is there anything else I could, besides that? Like I said, I knew it would take a lot of time and a lot of effort. I wasn't sure what the message would be. I struggled with that. So it took, even after I knew I was going to do it, even as I was, like Moses standing at the burning bush, I had 101 reasons for not writing a book. I said,
right.
Express that to you. Why another book? I enjoy books. I do a lot of reading. But there's a lot of information out there, and what did I have to say that would be different? But, I just started, after about 2 years. Charlene said, you really need to start on this book. And I had shared with my class that the Lord had impressed me that to write a book. And I did that actually to hold me accountable. I mean, the Lord tells you something, you tell somebody else so that you're accountable to that while you're trying to figure out just exactly how you're going to do that. And that's where this all started. It started based on a need, a desire to connect with people. And I knew that a book is a good bridge in doing that. People love to read. That's why there's so many books. And everybody has a story, I wasn't sure how my story would resonate with people, but I had a desire and love literature, and just wanted to see if I could write something that would resonate with people, that would not necessarily be focused on me, but would be message driven. And, so I like I said, I worked with that for about 3 years and looked at what I had done in my manuscript, but it didn't have the message that I wanted. And that's when I reached out to the two of you. And after about the third interview, you helped me see what that message, what the message was. And also, how we should frame that with the cover of the book, the title of the book. And I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do. And then back and took that huge manuscript and then condensed that down, and you and I worked together, to produce the final product that we're about to release. And I'm excited about this. It's exactly what I wanted to do. But it just takes, God connects us with people that helps us to figure these things out, and so he can move us in the direction he wants us to go. So we're on the verge of doing that. Here we are, and I'm excited about it. I feel a great sense of satisfaction knowing that I did the impossible and did exactly in my heart what I wanted to do.
I remember those first couple of meetings when you had such a significant body of work that, because you've been through so many experiences and you have a lot to say about it. And you've been a chaplain for many years. And so you've had the opportunity to speak into other people's lives. And I recall with this massive body of work, there really kind of was the question, okay, what's the thread? How do we pull on the thing that really matters? And then that became the title, The Hope of War, which I think spoke to you. And then that kind of helped shape all of this body of work, what stays, what doesn't, and then, and brought us all to a point.
That's exactly true. That's exactly how it happened. I couldn't have written, what we have produced had I not had this larger manuscript where I'd done all this research. So when I went back after I had, decided what the message was going to be, as we agreed upon that, and you helped me to stay focused on that. Cause again, preachers are long-winded, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I had some long chapters. And, I think chapter 11 was 30 pages long, but, but if you're going to tell a story, it's more than information. It's emotion, it's raw experiences, it's lessons learned, it has, redemptive value. You want to leave some redemptive value in that, something people can latch on to. Who perhaps, are working through, young people, for example, who are yet to discover, what life is all about and the challenges they're going to face, and to have the tools to know how to challenge those, to face those. I was fortunate. I had great mentors, but not everybody has mentors, they're great mentors. And I was fortunate to have, to be surrounded by a family and great leaders and great men and women who really, didn't tell me how to live my life, but certainly gave me some, wise insights how to approach it. Young people today, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of young people don't have that. This book is a way to give that to them. That's why we mentioned the principles there. People who reviewed the book, they will refer to the fact that there are great insights that people can really build on. That was the purpose of all those things. And that was really the Holy Spirit driven. There's no, I've always said that between the three of us and the Holy Spirit, we've got a foundation. I think we offer a foundation to people that they can take and build on, And that's what we want to do in developing their own story.
Yeah. One of the things you bring out in the book is not just this idea of war and the times that you spent in Vietnam and other places, but you talk about where you were born, grew up, and how, you're just a young man from nowhere, USA, to now an influential character. Walk us through, why is that idea of that root and where you started so important for you to express as part of your,
because you can't get away from the people that help shape who you are. I mean, they need some recognition. And that first chapter was a chance to give them the recognition that they deserve. I mean, it's like John Maxwell says, no one gets to where they're going on their own, that there are people who are involved in that process, that help you along the way. And we shouldn't forget that. I mean, we should reciprocate. And that was my way of doing that. I can't get away from how I was raised. And the things that I talked about in that first chapter were very much a part of my upbringing. And they helped instill the values, that were very important to me. Okay. That kept me grounded. When you're going through a very difficult time, it's those deep convictions, that are born out of those experiences, that are born out of the relationships that you have, that really help, that keep you grounded, keep you from quitting, and keep pushing you forward. People had a lot of expectations of me, because they had invested a lot in me, and so that was one of the things that when I experienced failure, that, I just pick myself up and continued on just like I always have, because that was the example that I had. Okay. Well, if we read the script, when we read the scripture, that's what we see time and again, a lot of people, who struggle, but who don't give up, but just keep pushing forward, not a perfect world, not a perfect life, but it's a great life. That I had, when I thought about, I told Charlene, when we were talking about, getting started and why she was so, instrumental to me actually doing that, stepping off and start writing, was the fact that again, there were just so much, I didn't think I could relive all that. All of it was good. It was a great lie. But, for example, I got to one part in the book and it was about 3 or 4 weeks before, I stopped for a while because I had to emotionally process some of those experiences and decide how I was going to talk about them. And it didn't mean that life wasn't good. It just means that sometimes it's so challenging, you don't want to look back and relive those experiences. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You move beyond them, but yet, there's some value in going back and reprocessing those things and thinking it through and letting God lead you through that. And then you begin to see how he was teaching you, during that process so that, you could be of some benefit to others, And, when, it's just like the Holy Spirit comes alongside when we fall on our face, and helps us up. And that's what we do with other people. We process these things, learn things so that we can come alongside when they fall on their face and say, look, it's not so bad. Just get up. Let's just keep moving forward. And you'll find in doing that, you can get beyond it in times.
As a chaplain and a leader, I can only imagine that it's true that as you speak to other people and they have given you influence into their lives and they want to hear from you, that as you speak, whatever you speak has to make its way through you first. If you speak conviction to someone, you feel convicted, right? If you try to raise somebody up, you feel your own self like, I need to raise myself up too. As you open some of these old stories, these old chapters of your life that have been perhaps closed for many years, how have you seen this process of writing change you from before you took on this task to now that the book has been written and now distilled and is out in the universe?
Well, it did change me. All the assumptions that I had that I tried to avoid were not valid. Again, there was something to learn by going back and reliving those things and thinking them through. Okay. And trying to pick up the lessons, and even if I had to stop for a while, and give that some room, some latitude to do that, the benefits of doing that were evident in the end. You produced a chapter that has some meaning. It's just not a story. Again, it's a narrative filled with emotions. It's a narrative filled with, actual experience, and you find some resolution in the end,
Yeah.
and, the worst thing you can do is leave people, wondering, well, how did it work out? There are some books that end that way, but so I try to, for each stage that that I was talking about in each chapter, which really was a stage. It was, I moving from one, from being drafted, to becoming a soldier and going through the crucible of that change, then going to Vietnam, there are these different phases, that I went through, it was a building block process. And I tried to, at the end of those chapters, to explain, the benefit that was derived by going through that. Okay? And not to leave that hanging, like I said, I've read so many books sometimes when I'm left, with question marks still, what was the outcome? And, I didn't find a conclusion there in that, and I was just left on the edge of the cliff, but I'm not that polished of a writer. I'm just saying, for me, that was something I felt like needed to be done, and so I worked on that. It just took me longer probably than it did someone who was very skilled at writing, but I feel more than, I see these things, I can, as I draft an outline, I can see in my mind how this is going to unfold, it's just finding out how to get there, and being true to the story. In other words, not fabricating anything. This is what I remember from that experience, and being truthful about it, not exaggerating things, but, so is it really important, to, make sure the information was really reflected what actually happened,
I think one of the things that stood out to me the most, Larry, as we were putting all this together, was you had all these stories and you knew and possessed the conviction that they would amount to something to the reader. And the difficulty that you ran into was figuring out how to put that all together in a book that somebody could read and, and follow the narrative.
Yeah.
But once we could begin to see in each chapter the benefit that a reader could take out of it, even if they're a young person today who's not heard much about Vietnam, isn't familiar with the conflict, doesn't understand how it came to be, but they can go in there and they can read about stuff that's public knowledge, right? That's, that you can read, research on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the perspective of someone who lived through it. And at the same time, they can read about a circumstance and say, oh, so there's a different way to do this. There's a different way to think about this. I don't need to just continue going down the same path I've been going because I don't have any other way to think about it. And I always flash back to
Well,
first,
for young
the
people,
first chapter.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but I wanted to encourage him to think critically. And so, by speaking from my own experience, where again, there were a lot of voices that were competing for my attention, and I was too immature to sort all of that out. But the advantage that I had, like I said, I had the example of other people, good mentors, who again, never tried to dominate my life because they wouldn't have worked anyway. As a teenager, you don't want to be pushed faster than the train's willing to go. And,
Sure.
and, so people were wise in that regard, but they lived what their values. And my relationship with Larry West, I talked so much about, he was never preaching to me, but he just lived those values. And those values, just like Jason was talking about, were convicting to me, and I was inquisitive because I saw how his life, what an impact he had on people. I never forgot that. I talked to one of his door gunners who was one of the reviewers and who told me that he was different than the other officers that he flew with. And this guy had served in Vietnam twice as a door gunner, preaching door gunner. And he said he always reached out to us. He's always interested in the crew, genuinely interested in people. Well, that was the impact it had on me. I didn't care about people's background. And I'm very grateful that I learned that early. Okay. I didn't care if they were religious or not. I didn't care if they shared my values or not. We were in this fight together and I had to depend on them. I underscore the fact that we didn't always get along. It was, we were people from a cross section of America. We were all kinds of backgrounds and genders and ethnic groups. And so we brought all that to to what we were doing. But when it came down to facing combat, you couldn't have a greater group of people because we were committed to each other. We knew that was the only way to survive. Life is like that. You don't have to be in combat to realize how much you need other people. Okay. And that, these preconceived barriers that we put up that keep us separated, we can be helpful to people. We can be friendly to people. We can make those decisions. And I made the decision early based on, again, my parents, based on my upbringing in my hometown, based on people I've been raised around, based on what I saw in Lynn, I made a choice. I made a choice to treat people like I wanted to be treated, and it didn't mean that they had to like me in the process. But you know why? It's just, like I said, I went to this reunion with the Navy Seabees that I was with there at Desert Storm. I hadn't seen them in 33 years, and before I go up there, they sent me, an email telling me, say, look, we're so excited about your coming. That to the most of us, you're a hero. Well, that just, I'm dumbfounded by that. I've never, but that's how they treated me, always treated me that way. And to be able to speak to them, to tell them, because that's my introduction to becoming a combat chaplain, So I'd had all the experiences that, as a warrior myself that I carried over, obviously, in what I did, but to be able to apply that, in my own right, my concept of what a combat chaplain should be. It's like the door-gunner friend that flew with Len West told me that. He said, I wish you'd been my chaplain in Vietnam. After I read your book, I wish you'd been my chaplain in Vietnam. He said, I never saw my chaplain. And I said, well, I'll tell you, my concept of combat chaplain was forged about the last 4 months of my tour of Vietnam when I had this roly-poly Southern Baptist chaplain came out, and he was always out in the thick of it, with us. That was the only chaplain I saw the whole time I was in business. And Chaplain Riley was always out there with us. And I said to myself, if I were ever a chaplain, that's exactly how I would do. I would be in the thick of it with the people I was trying to minister to, whether they responded to my ministry or not. I would share their hardships, just like Moses, he'd rather, share the hardships of his own people than he would to live in the palace. And that is really a good definition for a combat chaplain. You got to be out there with them.
Yeah.
Here, as a shield, as a storm, where they remember the fact, everywhere they turned around, I was always there. I mean, I lost pounds long there, in the desert. And because I just stayed on the go, and of course I didn't carry a weapon, and I had one RP, which I left in the rear with the gear to keep things going while if people need to contact me or whatever. So I would have other people who would volunteer to ride with me until they were exposed to all the danger. And they said, Chaplain, we're not going with you again. I've never slept all night in my mob gear. You know what I'm saying? My civil protection gear and stuff like that. Yeah. I learned that from Chaplain Riley, but I had a chance to flesh it out in my own right, during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And that's what I meant. That's what I told him, is that, you really shaped me into the person that I became. And that was the person I really wanted to be. But I had a chance to flesh that out, to experience it, to really, to see how it would work, because that was my concept of what I should be doing. I should be, sharing the hardships that you were sharing, and exposing myself to the things you were being exposed to, and preaching the gospel and living the gospel and being there, as a symbol of the presence of God among all that chaos.
Yeah.
So I think it's John Maxwell who talks about this idea that the old saying that experience is the best teacher is a bit incomplete, because there's lots of people with a lot of experiences who haven't learned anything. And he completes that statement by saying it's evaluated experience, which perhaps is the best teacher. And I see that in your book, that you're thinking through your experiences, you're evaluating them, and then you're concentrating them into a message for the reader. And I'm wondering, for the younger folks in the military, perhaps, who are either in the thick of it or getting out of the military, transitioning into, private life, what are some of the messages that you bring out in your book that you would want to leave with them?
Well, I mean, what they do and how they train to do what they do can really be addictive. And you think that's what it's all about. It's about being thought of as a hero when you're not really being tested whether or not you're a hero. You know what I'm saying? I mean, heroes are born out of a moment, that require some type of response. We don't know exactly how, every time you go through training, I can remember thinking that when I went to Vietnam, I was very honest about that, whether or not I would stand the test, Mm-hmm. But the purpose of the crucibles I had gone through was to get me closer, to whether, to that actual experience, and so you have to be patient with yourself, and there's always those self-doubts, but once you go through it, then the other problem is, the other side of the coin is that you feel very self-assured. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're addicted. And I talked about being addicted to the adrenaline rush. Like the last mission I went on, I didn't have to go on that mission. There are other people who volunteered wanted to go, but I was so addicted in my own mind, that nothing could happen to me because I'd already gone through it. And, I could, I was 10 feet taller and I improved. Well, improved, but it's not true. The problem with that mindset is the fact that you don't realize that anything can happen and life can change on a dime. But to get back to the question, again, I want to be transparent in this book to help people think that there's always the danger there of getting sucked into that mindset. And warriors do, they really get addicted to what they do. They love it. Okay. But what's really important though are the relationships that you build. It's like trying to save the world like Navy SEALs, do. Okay. That you talk to them, they're out there to save the world, to save America, to preserve freedom, to protect our way of life. But yet, their divorce rate is 90%. So you can win the world and lose what's most important to you, and that's your family. So you need this balance.
Yeah.
Right? And so I talk about these things to help warriors understand there has to be a balance. What they do is extremely important. We can't do without them. It costs us a lot to protect the nation. Okay. And that's exactly what they're doing. All right. And everything that we hold dear, they're sacrificing to protect, and they feel that dedication and commitment to do it, and they train very hard to do it. Not everyone, but for the most part. Okay. But the thing is, at the same time, you got to realize that relationships are important. Your family is important. Your children are important. You got to find a way to strike a balance, and you can do that. Okay. You can do it with God's help. You can do it with a supportive family by not taking them for granted. You can do it by remembering the small things you need to do, like make an effort, even when you're under pressure to do something special for your wife, like bring her flowers. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we get lost in our own importance in what we do, because we know that defending a nation requires a lot of us, but we can't do it at the expense of the other things that are more important, that are more enduring, like a relationship. And I try to stress that. Paul did a great job at helping me do that. Okay. But those were the things I wanted to bring out. Okay. I wanted to see this individual who was from the start, to the end, who, was, small town nowhere, but yet the values that he took with him played forward, made all the difference in the world. And it gave
for our viewers and listeners, I want to emphasize that what you're talking about there, this value of relationships and how you call it out in your book, you've lived this, because as part of this whole launch process for you, many times people in their older age have a smaller circle.
Yeah.
And your circle is vast, and people seem to love you and respect you and are coming out of the woodwork to support you. And that's unique. And not everybody is successful in creating that type of environment for themselves and the people that are around them. And it seems to be natural to you.
Well, that's the family I came from. They invested in us and other people. I mean, it was just not their own concerns and their own ambitions that they worked toward. Dad of my father, my mother was reckless and outgoing. I don't think she was afraid of anything. My father was more methodical, more thoughtful, and more nurturing. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. You know what I'm saying? But when people, even after all this time, still remember them, it speaks to what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel so fortunate that one of the greatest gifts that they gave me was to see this, that life is, there's more to life than yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's about people, it's about always being available and being approachable, and you're not there to solve their problem. I mean, people need to solve their own problem. That's the only way they can grow, but they do need someone who will listen. They need a sounding board. And you're right. I had thought about this when, you sent me the numbers of pre-sold books. I was really blown away by that because I thought at this age, a lot of people I know are gone. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have a whole generation growing up that don't know Larry Cripps.
Yep.
So and so I feel very, very fortunate that people still care. But I try to remember the little things, people's birthdays, their milestones, and send them a note, say congratulations. I think one of the reasons why the CBs responded the way they did is because I stayed in contact with them. Even though I didn't come to the reunion on Facebook, I had a connection, and their children, the milestones that they reached, I think of my own children, and I like people to recognize the milestones that they reach.
Yep. Larry,
it's again, and I.
The thing that's standing out to me as you talk about this is the point you made in the book where you said, soldiers and warriors tend to think that putting on that uniform somehow makes you superhuman, as though you have transcended your own limitations.
Yeah.
And that's, as you discovered, especially after 9/11, working at the Pentagon, wasn't true. And in fact, it took you on this journey of digging into a wound that had been on the inside for you for 30 years at that point. But because you had spent an equal amount of time building all those relationships and investing yourself in others, it didn't take very long for you to find your way out of that. Was it easy? No. Was it painful? Yes. But you had people you could go to who could talk you off the ledge and talk you through to the other side, where all of a sudden your career in the last 10 years took on some of its most significant and meaningful work. And that just speaks to,
well, I love to wear the uniform, and the way that you wear it, impresses people. You give them attention to detail, and I have been blessed, with wars and things, because I've been exposed to a lot of things, that generate those. It's not that I was a hero I thought I was. In fact, I cringe at that when people, use that word in reference to me, because I just don't see myself that way. But I do see myself as patriotic. I see myself as carry on the legacy that was given to me, protecting that legacy, and honoring those people who sacrificed so much to ensure that I had an opportunity to do the things that I did. I didn't get anywhere that I have been without the help of other people. Okay. And networking, I'll be honest with you, when I was a senior lieutenant in my second assignment at the Naval Air Station in Memphis, and there were 7 chaplains in that department because it was a training command, very large. We had 25, component commands on that base, on that air station. But yet, I knew the system. I could work the system. That was one thing I did well. I could make it respond in a way that I wanted to. I could call the detailer and negotiate the assignment that I wanted. And finally, the Lord, I preached a sermon in chapel about trusting God. And finally, when after it was over, Jason, I was convicted. And the Lord said to me, are you going to trust, your career to me? Or are you going to manage it? I mean, which is it? I mean, are you going to practice what you preach? You just preached in this congregation. Or are you going to live the rest of your life manipulating the system to get what you want, making the system a servant to you? Boy, and I was really convicted, but it was freedom. I repented of that, and I knew, as the Lord is, you're being convicted by the Holy Spirit about these things, you know exactly what your response has to be. There's no other way to respond but in humility and on your knees and say, God, forgive me for being, for being such a hypocrite. When you talk about the faith of Abraham, and yet I'm not willing to trust you with my career, my future.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I never negotiated my assignment. From that point on, it wasn't all about me. Okay. And, it wasn't always about, talking right, walking straight, wearing the uniform better than everybody else. It was about living the life.
Yeah.
From that point on. And once I decided to do that, everything changed. As there were times I got sorry assignments. And what I did was take what was given to me and try to make it better, And one example of that, there in Memphis, the women were really being marginalized. All these, students that had wives there was nothing. We were doing nothing for them. And I started a women's ministry that lasted for 25 years, long after I was gone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that grew because I just opened my eyes and I didn't care about who got the credit. I just focused on what needed to be done. And that's the way I did my ministry from that point on. I've talked about people who want to transform the Chaplain Corps because it's like any corporation, it has its problems and it's corrupt and it's abusive at times. And there could be a lot of jealousy and people would want me to get involved in that. I said, I'm not interested. I'm only interested in this assignment in this world right here. I mean, I said the Chaplain Corps doesn't belong to me. It belongs to God, And this command I'm in right now belongs to him. This is not my command. This is his command. And my job is to help the CEO shoulder this burden of command. And the best way I can do that is to minister to him and to their people.
Yes.
And live what I preach. And like I said, that was freedom for me. And that's why, I probably lasted so long, but it wasn't easy. I mean, people get envious of your success. People get jealous, of the attention you get. Sometimes you get, in the crosshairs of your command chaplain because the commander favors you over someone else. You live in that tension.
Yeah.
But if you don't worry about that, if you trust God with that and just do what's right, and serve others and don't worry about the credit, to me, that's what made my career such an enjoyable period of time. But it was full of conflict and struggle and all kinds of stuff, that go along with a career like that. But from my viewpoint, it was a great life.
Yeah. Well, I'm super proud to be part of taking this almost 700 pages that you had written, and you've lived a lot more pages than that. And then bringing that down to this point of where it's now a book, The Hope of War, because I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that. And, the message specifically, and there's another message in there that I just heard. We don't have time to dig into it, but you talked about conviction, and you said that the response to conviction is repentance. And what I heard in that is that there's always a clarity that comes in conviction. If some people wonder, am I feeling convicted? You're never confused. If it's conviction, the response. If otherwise, it's not conviction.
They're conflicted, not convicted. Yeah.
Like I said, it was like Moses at the burning bush. Even when he was offering excuses, he knew what the outcome would be. I mean, even when you're saying no, that obedience is the only place to be. That life cannot be satisfying, and that's what I'm saying. I'm really at a point where I'm really satisfied with this book. It's not is it a perfect book? It's just a book. Okay. But it's, I think the book is designed and based on the reviews. I'm just going off the reviews. Okay. And I had people read it that I knew that would be the most critical of all people and that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to expose myself, to the people who would be the most critical in their evaluation. And Terry Edinger was one of them. Okay. And he called me, he said, I want to tell you, I'm totally surprised about this book. I didn't expect this book to be this good. But he said I'm paraphrasing what he says, but he said, look, this is a great book.
Yeah.
Right? And I mentored him for the time he was at Lieutenant JG in 2002. And I mentored him to make flag. All right. And told him, I said, the Lion people, the people you're going to work for are going to love you. The chaplain corps is going to hate you. And you're going to encounter all kinds of jealousy and backbiting and all kinds of things. Don't pay any attention to that. Focus on these people and help them shoulder their responsibility. Just like we've been talking about. Okay. And I said, one day, because once you get to the flag level, it's all on who's on your board and who knows you. That's what it's all about. Okay. And so, they have said all the boards are confidential. Nobody's supposed to talk about it. You take an oath, of confidentiality. And of all things, after my flag board, the recorder calls me. He says, I was a recorder on your board. I said, well, okay, well, congratulations, He said, well, I want to tell you what happened. I said, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I don't care what happened. He said, I just want to tell you were selected for a flag, but the chief of chaplains wanted someone else. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you were selected. I said, well, you know what? If things really work out, because had I been selected, it would have taken me out of the fight.
Yeah.
All right. And I'd rather be in the fight because I can have more impact where I am as an 06 right now. I tell you, a captain at 06 in the Navy, boy, you could get away with a lot. I'm telling you. But there's so much prep work that has to be done once you make a flag. You just can't bounce into a room, unannounced. You can't do stuff like that. 06, it's just, I loved it. It just opened doors, where I could do exactly what I wanted to do. And that's just reach people. I just wanted to be there for them and to show them I could outrun them. I could hang in there with the best of them that I had. I could bring something to the table because I had the experience. You know what I'm saying? It was born out of experience. It was not born out of a vacuum. It wasn't my opinion. It's just like Jim McGarry said, he listened. Well, those 06 colonels in the Marine Corps listened as well.
Yeah.
Why? Because again, it was not history. It was, I actually lived it. And I couldn't argue with that. And I could stand toe to toe and disagree with them and tell them what they didn't want to hear. And with the Navy SEALs, they got me in a lot of trouble because they're not used to people telling them no, Yeah. And so, it's been a great life. And I'm grateful to both of you. I've told you many times, how I feel about this. I mean, us working together, really, the Holy Spirit has really helped, combined our talents and our gifts. I think it's going to be a good tool. This book is going to be a good tool. The early response indicate that I told Shirley and I talked about the early response, and I said, and we both agree. We said, whatever you lay at God's feet, I said in the book, when you lay it at God's feet, He'll use it.
Yep.
And that was the turning point for me. Was I wanted to hold on to the fact and believe that I was above the fray, and I had been running fast and running hard, and the Lord had to show me that I was no different. And if I would be that vulnerable, then He could use that. if I could be that transparent, they could use that, because that's what most warriors struggle with.
Yeah.
Is thinking that you're different from everybody else, but you're not. You're not different.
Yeah.
Your vanity is there. If you overlook your humanity and think you're some Superman, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And God wants to use you. God wants your brokenness. He wants your heart. He wants your availability to. He wants your honesty above everything else. Honesty with him, honesty with yourself. And I had to come to that point. And for the next 11 years, God used that. I'd had a great ministry up to that point. But the real impact, I couldn't work at the senior level had I not been able to have that confrontation and be honest with myself and honest with God. And it just propelled me to be able to work at that senior level and speak with some authority that people would listen.
Yeah. Yeah. What a story Larry Cripps has told and lived, and has the experience and the knowledge and the credentials and everything that goes with it to back it up. Larry, it's been a privilege collaborating with you to make this book a reality. We're so excited to launch it here in a couple of weeks.
Right.
For those of you watching on the podcast or listening, you can go to thehopeofwar.com and pre-order. Well, I don't know if it's coming out in time before it's launched, but you'll be able to order a copy there. It's also available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere else fine books are sold. So with that, Larry, thanks so much. The book is The Hope of War. Larry Cripps has been chatting with us. My name is Paul Edwards. This is my co-host, Jason Todd, and we will see you next time on the Emissary Authors Podcast.
Thank you.